Hey guys, be sure to listen through all the way to the end today. We've got a special surprise for you at the end. It's our birthday episode. Here we go. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Don't Watch at Night, your spooky little podcast dedicated to Spanish language horror and Latin American horror, both in movies and books. I am your host, Valerie.
And I'm Veronica.
Yes, and so it's a couple of things. Number one, this is our birthday episode officially. We've been talking about this since the start of July, but we are now officially, by the time this comes out, marking 1 year of podcasting. So happy birthday, Veronica.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to sing. Forget
it. The other thing is that we just came back. I love how I told Ron, we're going to take the month of June off. We're going to give ourselves that month. And then we came back in July and we've just been hitting it hard because we had episode 1 in July, then immediately whisked her off to Mesquite, Texas for the Haunters Convention here in Texas. And then bam, we're back to recording again. So hopefully I'm not burning her out right off the bat, coming right off of vacation. But
no,
yes, yeah, we just came back from Haunters Convention. We can elaborate more on that here for a little bit. Ron, you enjoyed yourself. You had a blast, or what were some of your takeaways from that experience?
I wish I had more money to spend buying stuff. No, it was very cool. I liked seeing a lot of the cosplayers' costumes. Some of them were really elaborate and really just imaginative. I would not have been able to. Yeah. I'm not creative, so anything that's going to take more than 10 minutes to do, I just don't have the.
Well, I mean, we had that
mental space to sit down and do it. But,
right? We had, yeah.
A lot of cool costumes, a lot of cool things to buy. I would have wanted to buy more, but.
Yeah. Well, and we also talked about like just being surrounded by other weirdos that also delight in the macabre and the creepy and you know, sure, people who love Halloween, but people who also just love dark things. I think I posted this on social media. I didn't have to explain to anybody that I bought nothing but bones there and earrings. It's the best of both worlds. Can I tell you a little bit about, real quick, and then we'll dive right in. I don't want to get to, but can I tell you a little bit about this journey, me with my bones? So Veronica was there with me last weekend at the Haunters Convention. I got very excited because I found 2 vendors that I bought bones from, actual animal bones. And to anybody who that makes them uncomfortable, totally understand. You are welcome to fast forward past this part. I have been very into bones for a long time. I do try to find small business vendors that source these things ethically. This particular vendor who I do mention in our after the show bonus clip that you guys will have at the time that this posts, she had a bin of like $5 miscellaneous bones, and you know, any bone, $5. And so I was like, perfect. And so I stocked up. I brought those bones home, and they were rough. I mean, they were cleaned, but minimally so. So I got home to do the lion's share of that work here. And I got to tell you, and I did my research online. I know the process for how to properly clean bones and go through that. You know, the degreasing, the cleansing, the whitening, all of that stuff. We are in the degreasing stage, and it's going a little bit longer than I thought it would, Veronica. It just seems like the more, because I change out the water routinely, the soapy water routinely, and it just seems like every time I go to change out the water, they smell even more. So I don't know. It's just going to be a while of me degreasing the bones.
Maybe you should have left them, because I don't remember them smelling when you bought them.
I know. That's the thing. It's like, well, these didn't smell that bad when I started, and now they smell worse than when I began. But they're whiter. They're really pretty. Once they're done, they're going to be really nice. Our mother was just like, why, Valeria? Why are you buying bones?
It's ethically sourced. I just have this vision of people going around killing little defenseless animals.
No, I mean, I will tell you, from this particular vendor, I mean, it's all in the name. She goes, and we'll talk about it in the after show, but Roadkill Boutique. So she specifically sources animals that she finds that have already been, that are already dead. So anyway, yeah. Today we have a film discussion for you guys. Ron, you just watched it last night or what?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I watched it on Tuesday, actually, and Veronica made note of this last night. She texted me. She's like, how many resources did you send us?
10.
It started at 10. It's now 12 because I added
Yes,
2 more.
I got off. I signed off. I logged off at work. Blah, 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 can't speak words, Veronica. I work from home, but I logged off at 4, which is when my typical work day ends. And then, of course, we're starting this podcast. We're recording it at 6. So I had an hour to go rush and read all those articles, watch I think there's 2 video interviews, and it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, but I put it there as like, you don't have to hit up every single one of these. Like, I can tell you honestly, I didn't hit up both video interviews. It's for the people. It's for the people because maybe there's more you guys want to dive in than we can do. I'm sorry, Ron. I didn't even ask you. How was your week? How have you been coming out of I was going to say Fantastic Fest, coming out of Haunters Convention?
Oh, that's been mentioned in some of those articles you mentioned. I was going to ask you about it, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Austin's Fantastic Fest. Doing okay. Like I said, I've been in a little bit of a funk. I actually called into work yesterday because I just didn't feel like it. I took a mental health day.
Well, maybe you're just tired. I mean, we had a very exhausting weekend. It was a full turnaround.
It's just my job duties have changed a little bit, and I don't have as much direct control over my schedule and appointments. So
more work, not necessarily more reward.
Yeah, more work. A lot of documentation.
Nice.
But it'll be fine.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and dive in then. So the film that we watched this week, guys, and hopefully you caught it as well. We posted about it on social media. You can find us on all social media at Don't Watch It Night Pod everywhere. Instagram, Threads, YouTube, whatever. So the film we watched is Desaparecer Por Completo, or Disappear Completely. This was a film that premiered at Fantastic Fest here in 2022, but it received theatrical release in Mexico this year, 2024, and it also hit Netflix streaming this year as well. So kind of a big gap. It's been on a bit of a journey. It's directed by Luis Javier Henaine, and it stars Harold Torres, Teté Espinoza, Norma Reyna, and then I didn't get the names of like the 2 police officers, the primary people that he is in that are featured in the movie. I didn't get the names of them.
They don't really have big parts. It's actually really pretty much just the main guy that carries really the whole movie.
Yeah. I watched this film earlier this week. This is a film, by the way, available on Netflix. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Veronica watched it just last night. So she's always going to be delivering that freshest take. And so I want to ask you, Ron, have you start us off. What did you think of Disappear Completely?
It was, I think one of the articles you linked, I forget which one, called it kind of like a slow motion car crash. And I think that's a pretty good description of it because it is much more slower paced. It's much more psychologically driven. Doesn't really have many, if any. Well, I take that back. It did have
I had some
at least one jump scare.
Yeah, I had some jump scares.
At least one where I jumped. But other than that, it really was just more the psychological horror that our main character is experiencing and the pretty cool way that the director found to make us as the audience towards the end of the film, which we'll get more into later, let us experience it also with him.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I enjoyed it.
No, yeah.
I think for the fact that the main actor that plays the main role, Santiago, was all over this film, I'm hard pressed to think of any scenes that he wasn't in, and I think he did a really good job of carrying the movie. And
very, very solid actor. Which I'm gonna say more of what I thought too, but to your point about jump scares, there were at least a couple for me, and I've gotten into this habit. And I did it in this movie where it's like the jump scare comes at me and I just instinctively hit pause. I'm like, oh, stop the movie. It's not a conscious decision that I do. I hit the pause button. Anyway, no, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Some of the resources that we have linked for you guys compare it to movies like Nightcrawler and Drag Me to Hell. And did you ever see Drag Me to Hell, Ron? I thought you said
no.
You had. Okay, you should. I very much agree with those assessments. I think Drag Me to Hell, especially, if you enjoyed that movie, then you're probably going to like this movie quite a bit. Then the only the note that I had was the film feels really heavy on visuals, not even so much heavy on dialogue, not problematically so. I thought it was a great story, but it's like you said, it's a lot of Harold Torres in scenes and you're just watching him react to what he's going through. And so it's not him in dialogue necessarily a lot of the time with other people. It's just him emoting.
Especially towards the end, the dialogue falls off even more so.
So I mean, you're getting those necessary story elements that further the plot, but it's visual heavy, and it is him kind of carrying this movie. And I agree. I thought he did a really great job. His face says so much in each scene.
Very,
So
very expressive. And I did like how this movie is kind of structured in terms of day. So like we're
yes,
following like the whole timeline of the movie takes place over what, 5
like
days?
a week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
like a week. And so it's marked off in days, and so you can kind of help keep track of when everything is happening. So it starts off with apparently he's a photographer,
yeah,
and
like a tabloid
we
photographer.
come to find out that he works for a tabloid, and his specialty is taking pictures of dead people, of corpses at crime scenes, and they get plastered on this tabloid scene. Which is that a thing in Mexico? Is that allowed? Because it's not allowed in the States, as far as I know. You're not going to
Well,
just
what do you
open
mean
a
by not
newspaper.
allowed? Like,
Well, I mean, you're not going to open up any paper in the U.S. and see a graphic, scene of a
well,
corpse.
I mean, I don't know when the last I remember back in the day, I don't really see them on newsstands at HEB or grocery stores anymore, but like the tabloids, like I remember seeing as a child photos of like John F. Kennedy's body post autopsy, like those kinds of images plastered on American tabloids. So,
I don't recall seeing like just your average John
yeah.
Citizen. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's a thing. So that's
Well,
his
it's just like
job.
these sensationalist photos, yeah,
Yeah.
just
He's listening to a police scanner to hear where the next crime scene is. He also has a couple of cop buddies that he bribes under the table to call him out before the medical examiner and the rest of the police detectives and whatever get out there. He gets a call. He's supposed to meet his girlfriend. Well, it's not his girlfriend, it's his wife.
yes.
Which we find out actually later in the movie. They've been together for 14 years. Don't know how many of those years have actually been married, but they've just been together. They've agreed to meet for dinner. He's going to pick her up at 8:00 for dinner, but picks her up, and as soon as she gets in the car, pretty
Well,
much.
but so like I want to go back though because like prior to all of that, we have like that scene where we kind of establish that he is that tabloid creepy photographer who sort of he listens in on police scanners and shows up at these scenes to grab that provocative shot. There is that grisly scene that we first see where it's the woman that's been crushed by some pole in like a car accident.
Yeah, but I didn't think that doesn't really play into the plot.
Well, no, but
I
I
didn't
like I
think it
wanted
was
to
that.
ask you like what was because in that scene we also established that not only is he a tabloid photographer, but he's also just kind of you can tell he's kind of a little bit jaded by this job and in terms of what he's trying to do in capturing this close up of this woman. It's not just about getting the cover story, it's also just like there's a part of him that really sees this as high art and wants to sort of make a name for himself in the photography world. So on top of this little gig as a tabloid photographer, he's also trying to get his work published or not published, but carried in an art gallery. So there's something that he sees very artistic to this gruesome scene. My question for you is what was your impression of him in that opening sequence where you're like seeing what he does for a living and kind of what his attitude is about it, that he kind of just has no,
I didn't take it that he was necessary because I didn't, and I meant to go back and kind of rewatch that scene where because I wasn't altogether sure if he was submitting the dead people photos to be included in a gallery showing or if there were separate, more quote unquote normal photos that he was doing for that. So that's where I wasn't real clear if, because that would seem like to not be very, what's the word? Reasonable to expect that a gallery is going to showcase those kinds of photos. So I wasn't
We'll
100% sure that those were the same kind of photos he was trying to get exhibited.
See, I was sure of that because based on like how he was when he later on when we're seeing him in the dark room and we're seeing him do the digital editing on the digital images and he's commenting on his own work saying this is badass. I don't know, like for whatever reason I just internalized. Oh, okay, so he not only is doing his job, but he's also just sort of it delights him to take these photos and to come up with what he thinks is a beautiful, perfect shot and a snappy headline with it. And it's for him, there's something very weirdly gratifying about that. I didn't have negative opinions of him, but I was just like,
I saw
okay.
it more as
he's
he
kind of jaded.
I saw it more as he has aspirations for being like, and again, quote unquote, a real photographer with more traditional accepted shots. And like this tabloid job of shooting corpses is just a way to earn money, to make a living, to pay the bills, is how I saw it.
But anyway, so yes, yeah, close-up shots of that woman crushed by the pole, referenced in one of the resources we have for you guys, and we'll get to it later. I did a whole bunch of reading on a separate topic related to that particular scene, so we'll cover that later. He has the date with his wife that kind of fizzles because they're supposed to have dinner together, but what you said he gets a call.
He gets a tip. He got a call from one of those
fresh crime
cop
scene
buddies that involves a senator. So of course he wants to beg off of the dinner date with his wife, and then she lets him know that she's actually pregnant, which doesn't go down well with him. He they've been together for 14 years, and I guess the implication is that they had kind of mutually decided that they were never going to have kids. They've taken precautions to not have them.
Or maybe he just thought he would be at a certain point in his career before they would even go down that road, right?
Mm-hmm. So he's not really, he doesn't think it's the right time. They're not ready. There's his career and it hasn't taken off yet. And her mindset of, well, if we've taken all these precautions to avoid pregnancy and I still got pregnant, maybe that means something. So her headspace is in a much different place than his. He's just more focused on getting to this shot or getting to the crime scene with the senator. So she leaves. He goes, because he was having this conversation with his wife, got there later than he was supposed to. And the cop tells him, hey, you're too late. Sorry. The ME's almost here. So he decides he's going to hop the wall and sneak inside the senator's home. There is another cop in there that's also a friend of his that he's bribed in the past, who lets him, I guess, go ahead and take a couple of quick shots before the whole police entourage arrives. So he's taking pictures of this senator who's lying on the floor. He's kind of in his underwear. There's dead rats laying all around him. The cop tells him that the rats had been eating on his legs, which is just a disturbing.
Has happened. Like terrible things have happened to his face. Like he's missing an eye. It's very gruesome. How did you feel? Like
actually, I thought they did they flicked away from the shots of the body so fast that I couldn't never really get.
Well, between that scene and then the first scene, the woman crushed by the pole. Where are you on grisly, gruesome horror factor? I'm
not really bothered by it. I think
I
think it's been pretty tame. Like the lady crushed by the light pole wasn't really anything but her
it's disturbing, but it's not like
maybe I'm jaded. I don't know. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, no. I mean,
so he's taking these pictures, and at one point, I think they hear a noise or something. The cop goes to look, and as soon as they hear the noise, it kind of causes them to jump. And I took it to be where Santiago, our main character, his finger's already on the, what do you call it? The button on the camera.
The button.
The button. There's not a specific name for it. The button on the camera, and it takes a picture when he kind of startles, and they don't find anything. The cop doesn't see anything, so they proceed on.
Another key kind of jump scare with the senator.
He suddenly sits up and starts saying, kill me, please kill me.
Santiago is closing in for a grisly close-up, and we do. Like, I got a pretty good jump scare out of the senator, who we come to realize very quickly is certainly not dead, though he wishes he was. He's like, kill me, please kill me. But he lurches forward and kind of howls in Santiago's face. That particular moment ultimately proved to be quite tragic for Santiago because strange things start to befall him almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The first of which is that, so when he's leaving that scene, he's walking down the dark alley and he says he gets mugged. That was another kind of a jump scare for me too, where he's walking down the street and the street lights are flickering and suddenly out of nowhere.
I don't remember him parking that far away when he got there.
Yeah.
It seems like he's walking down this really long street. And we don't really get a good view of the person
who it is, what it is,
but he gets a blur.
He gets knocked unconscious, and when he wakes up, all of his camera equipment's been taken, but he still has his little, I guess it's like an SD card. Mm-hmm. He still has that. So I was very sad that all of his fancy camera equipment got stolen. Yeah, he goes to bed that night. He has a bad dream that's kind of a foreshadowing in my view of things to come, where he's the lifeless body that's being photographed. Mm-hmm. And then immediately we get a flash across the screen, Tuesday or martes. So, and that is where he wakes up that morning. We get the first symptom. The first symptom is his nose bleeding on that ultrasound pic, right? The ultrasound pic that she had put on the fridge.
Yeah, he's in the kitchen, which is prophetic. Pretty clear foreshadowing there. And zombie in the background is very
Well, Zombie is the dog.
Very yeah, Zombie's his dog, which is a cool name. I was like, the dog's name is Zombie. Zombie's his dog is very focused, hyper fixated on something under the kitchen cabinet that he's trying to get at, and for whatever reason, Santiago just ignores it. He doesn't like go over to see what you after, boy, or anything like that. But I guess he's distracted by the nosebleed.
The dogs always know. They always
dogs
know.
always know. In fact, going back to the night before when he gets back home from the senator's crime scene and he's, uploaded his pictures from his SD card into his computer and he's editing them, Zombie is already starting to bark and he's sensing something just even through the pictures. And of course, nobody's paying attention to the dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the next morning he's ignoring the dog again, bleeding on the sonogram picture.
Which I'm like, dude, get your act together. You're bleeding all over the photo.
He gets another call from his cop buddies, another crime scene. There's a pregnant woman that's been stabbed and left. Her body's been left in what looked like an abandoned warehouse.
Very disturbing, yeah.
And here's the first clue, because the cops say she's been there for several days. The female cop, the smell, she's puking her guts out in a trash can.
Yes.
And Santiago doesn't seem to smell anything.
He's like getting all up in there and he's just like, oh, you guys are rookies. Yeah. But the reality is he can't smell. He can't smell.
Yeah, he can't smell her. And this is when he does show that a little bit of that jaded aspect that you mentioned, Valerie.
Yes,
because
this is what I was talking about.
He lifts up her shirt to kind of expose her pregnant belly to kind of get a better shot of her stab wounds. Because that's what the cop says, is that she's been stabbed by her boyfriend. And again, little red flags, foreshadowing going off, because pregnant woman murdered by her boyfriend. And we've got the situation with our Santiago and his wife where she's pregnant and he's not thrilled about the pregnancy. So
right. So he's staging certain elements of her corpse because it will make a better photograph. In other words, is his logic. And so that's sort of where I was just like, kind of, we're walking a tightrope with the morality here.
Well, and remember that's something that the tabloid editor dude, whatever, told him. He was, because apparently when he submits his photos to the tabloid tinkers with them to make them even more. Because what was the editor telling him? People want to see dead bodies that look dead. So it was like really emphasizing like the more gore, the more exploitive, the better. So that's kind of what the paper's wanting. Santiago is delivering that. And I also was thinking, dude, you're touching the body, you're contaminating this crime scene all over the place.
Right. And so then what happens? Suddenly the dead woman, in quite a moment of zombie mode, comes to life, lunges at Santiago. She's got glazed over white eyes. This sends him into kind of a seizure where he's foaming at the mouth.
We're not clear as the audience whether this actually happened or if this is just, this curse is causing him to hallucinate. And so we're not clear. I'm not clear.
He's there. He's seizing on the floor. He gets checked out by an EMT who tells him that could be symptomatic of any number of things. You need to go see a specialist. Get yourself checked out. I think I have it. Like after this, he somehow makes his way back home. Zombie, the dog, is continuing to bark and try to alert him to the fact that something is seriously wrong. And so then we get to Wednesday. So Wednesday flashes across the screen. We immediately learn that his sense of taste is off because he's sitting there at the kitchen trying to drink his coffee, and we get a clear indication that he can't really taste it. He ends up dumping it in the sink.
Think it just tasted off.
You think so? You don't think it was an indication that his taste is going? Because later on he's having lunch.
I think it's an indication that his taste is going. I just don't think it was completely gone. I think it was just affecting the taste of, because I think it's like a slow over the course of the day.
Well, yeah. That's what I meant. Like that's what he said. His taste is off, not taste is gone. I said off. So later he's having lunch with, and her name is Marcela, right?
Well, he calls her Marce. It's Marcela.
In the hospital. And so, that's where we realize he can't taste anything because he's like globbing hot sauce onto his taco and he's like, I can't taste it. Then he goes through like an MRI. He's getting all checked out.
Let's get you checked out. They do all kinds of tests. Everything's normal. Santi goes back home. Dog is still trying to get at the thing under the kitchen cabinet. When Santi goes to try to pull him away, Zombie bites him on the arm.
That's right.
So Santiago kind of, what was that, a pantry? I don't know. Some other room. He locks him in another room, shuts him away. And
like, to your point, by now, I would have immediately investigated what's going on underneath the cabinets that my dog is going insane over. Like,
Yeah.
just check that out.
So now he goes to start Googling,
Yep.
what are causes for losing your taste and smell. He makes the connection that, well, maybe the senator had something that was contagious and he picked it up. So he's kind of
Were you
really...
thinking this was going to be some kind of viral zombie-esque?
Well, I kept wondering the whole time. No, I didn't think it was going to be a zombie movie. But all this time I kept wondering, well, like, why would somebody have cursed him? And, what did he do? I just was looking for a reason for why he's cursed in the first place. So he's examining the digital pictures and kind of zooming in. And then he notices that there's a kind of a shadowy face in the shadows.
Well, I think that happens later.
No.
So what happens now is that he learns that the senator is in the hospital still hanging on. So he goes to see him in the hospital, and he like puts on hospital clothes and one of his many fake badges to get into the hospital. I don't know. He determines that the senator is like in a vegetative state at that point. He can't really see or process what's going on. Later that night, Zombie, the dog, is continuing to give him problems. And so he's in the kitchen trying to wrangle Zombie to be quiet. And he drops a bottle of hot sauce and cuts his foot. And he can't feel
before
it.
that, he wakes. He's in the kitchen because he has another nightmare. And in his nightmare, rats are eating his legs. It's kind of a nightmare within a nightmare, because his first nightmare is the rats are eating his legs and he wakes up breathing heavy, but he's not really awake. He's just another nightmare. And his second nightmare within the nightmare is that Marcela is dead in the bed next to him. She's bled out from the stomach, which again is a heavy foreshadowing to loss of the child. And then he wakes up for real.
Yes.
Marcela's asking what's wrong. He's like, no, I'm fine. And he gets up, goes to the kitchen. And then, as you said,
and he cuts his foot. Yeah. And he realizes he didn't even feel that. But then he finally decides to look for what's under the cabinets
that the dog's been after for 2 days.
Do you want to describe what he finds?
What the hell was it? At first I thought, is it
you
like
can tell it was a frog? It's a frog.
Well, I knew it was a frog, but I didn't know, was it like a real desiccated frog or like a stuffed animal, like a toy frog? I wasn't quite sure. Later on, then
like
it was
taxidermied
clear.
Frog? I don't know.
Later on it was clear that it was like a desiccated old dried up frog that someone had sewn things in. But in that initial,
what would you do if
he touched it. He just touched it.
What would you do if you found something like that in your home?
Get gloves. For one, I would get gloves.
It was so it's like that. It's crudely stitched, so it's just like it's obviously been tampered with. I would freak. Yeah. Get gloves.
Get gloves. I mean, hello. And then he just the next day which now we're transitioning to Thursday. He's having lunch somewhere with his 2 cop informants, and
we should know their names. Those actors.
I don't know if they ever said them.
I don't know. I don't know that they have names in the movie, but they're delightful.
Male cop and female cop. So he thinks his home was broken into.
Yes.
But the cops don't necessarily think so, because nothing was stolen, and they're, why do you think you were broken into? And so he just plops this dead, desiccated frog in a baggie, which at least he's had the sense to put it in a baggie. He just plops it on the table while they're eating
their lunch. They're like, what the hell?
And male cop dude says, it's witchcraft. And I know someone you can talk to.
Yeah.
Which you just gotta love, right? Because then that's the culture. It's like somebody gave you the evil eye.
You need to go see a healer woman. So
you need to cleanse, which is what happens.
He goes to see this woman, and she tells him, you're in grave danger. And she has him cut she asks him to pull out the frog, and then she says, cut it open. And I wrote, nah, I'm good. I'm okay. That's okay. But so he cuts it open, and what does he find? What does the message say?
It's a paper. Hold on, I wrote it down here somewhere. Shoot, where is it?
It's
a message that basically says, Santiago, whatever his name is, your life will be in darkness.
Yes, your life will be in darkness.
And so Leonor says, dude, this is beyond me.
That's what her name is. Her name is Leonor. That's right. Okay, so that's Norma Reyna. Okay.
He's like, this is beyond me, but I know someone who can help you, but it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you 100,000 pesos, which I was going to look that up, how much that was.
With that
She charged 2,000 pesos, which I did look that up in US dollars. That's $111.40.
So what did you say? That the next one is going to be 10,000?
100,000 pesos.
100,000. Okay. Yeah. So, and she also says you're going to need to offer a sacrifice. And were you immediately like, not the dog?
I was thinking it's either the dog or the baby because of that dream he had where
Oh.
she was bled out from like the stomach area. And so I thought, oh God, he's going to
See,
sacrifice this baby that he doesn't even really want.
I was truly believing in his goodness at that point. So I was just like, it's gonna be the damn dog. And I was like, not that dog. So
Well, I knew it was going to be one of those. So he, of course, doesn't have whatever 100,000 pesos so he kind of goes and he pawns off a lot of his cameras and, nice looking lenses.
Oh, and we do in between all of that, we do also get some in between meeting with her and then getting the things together for this ritual, this visit with this person. We do get some good scenes where we're getting close up of his hands. He's in his car and we're getting the sense that what's starting to go for him is his sense of touch, his sense of feeling. I wanted to ask you what you thought of those moments, those visuals that were being given. I thought that was really effective.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good way to convey.
Good storytelling.
Because he's trying to feel the air coming out of the AC vents. He's touching things in the car. And so I thought it was a really efficient, very visual way to convey the loss of that.
Did you have other theories at this point besides the possibility that maybe he was going to end up sacrificing his wife and child? Did you have other theories going in your brain?
No, because I still had no idea why he was cursed when we actually don't find out the reason for it till probably the last 10, 15 minutes of the film. So it's a long time waiting for that answer. So I didn't really have a theory. I'm like,
yeah.
Somebody, I don't remember who, I think it was the female cop asked him, well, maybe it's one of these pictures of dead people, maybe the upset family members, somebody's after you.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's got to be somebody involved with a family member who's taking vengeance.
So he has decided, Valerie, as you were correct, that he's going to sacrifice zombies. So he puts a bunch of, I'm guessing, sleeping pills in a ball of raw meat, gives it to Zombie to kind of
I thought he was killing him right then and there, which ultimately I think would have been a more humane way to do it. And then you realize he's not. He's just putting him to sleep to bring him on this journey.
And my whole thing is you're going to sacrifice the dog and it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough to satisfy the ritual. So I already knew it was going to be for nothing. So
what did you think what did you think of the ritual scene? Well, I mean, I guess, take us through that. Yeah.
He meets Leonor and the both of them and knocked out Zombie and a bunch of other men. I don't know what you call that. They're on a barge and they're poling down the river or up the river. I don't know which direction they're going, but it seems like they're going quite a ways. They're being pulled down the river.
They're leaving the metropolitan area that they're in, and it's definitely getting more rural, more countryside. And so, they're leaving to go see. And who is this man? Is he just
They don't say his name.
Okay.
They don't.
He's just a healer.
A brujero, something.
Healer of the old ways.
And so there's whole ritual that involves chanting and dancing and beating on drums around a fire.
It reminded me of the ritual scene in Mal de Ojo. Do you remember that movie? That was our first movie that we covered in this show.
I was thinking of the one in that Satanic Hispanics.
Oh, yes.
That one. Although not quite as violent. Well, it is quite as violent because poor Zombie. So that goes on for a while and they bring out the dog. They give Santiago a knife. And so he basically slits poor Zombie's throat.
We don't see it, thank God. But we know it's happening.
It's happening right below the camera. And then the old man takes Zombie's blood and just pours it all over Santiago's head.
I want to talk real quick about the consistency of that because I thought you know me, I'm always fascinated with blood consistency in horror movies. So the consistency here in this scene where they're pouring the fresh blood over his head is very thick. It's dark red. It's almost like wax. So I thought it was really gnarly and visually very cool, but also I couldn't help but be grossed out and sad for
poor Zombie.
Poor Zombie. R.I.P. Zombie.
Who was just trying to warn him and he never listened.
Exactly. Beautiful. I think that's a blue healer. It reminded me of a blue healer.
It's a very pretty dog.
And yes. So the next day, he's standing there looking out over the countryside. The woman, Leonor, tells him essentially that it's worked. He's healed. Except we know that's not true, Veronica. Because
this is early Friday morning, in the wee hours.
There's still 40 minutes left in this movie. So I'm like, I don't think he's healed.
Yeah, early Friday. After that scene, he goes home. he and Marcella, his wife, have sex, but it's pretty clear again by the way that it's shot that he's not really physically feeling the sensation.
Yes.
Which I
So
thought
it's
was artistically done.
yes, yes, and sad
Yeah.
because you're kind of getting flashbacks of previous times they've been together and intimate, and so you're just sort of realizing
He's just
what that
remembering what it feels
well,
like.
yeah, well, and also just you're getting the sense of like what it would mean to lose that, to like know that you can never know the touch of your loved one that way ever again.
Apparently, they go back to sleep again. Then he wakes up suddenly because this kind of weirded me out because he feels something in his ear, and the audio is very
Yeah.
distorted.
Distorted, yeah.
So we're getting a sense of what he's experiencing also. So he's freaking out because he feels something in his ear. Marcella's been getting ready for work, so she comes over to see what's happening, and she pulls out this pretty good sized flying bug out of his ear. That's it, that she then just lets it go inside the house.
And he seems very I was going to ask you like because he seems very much in the know and weirded out by that, but I wasn't getting the connection of the bug. Was the bug featured elsewhere in the movie and I just wasn't paying attention?
No, and I'm not
Okay.
sure why that, like, I don't know how that bug scene plays into, but it is kind of the catalyst, or I think maybe it's a sign to Santiago that the ritual didn't work,
Mhm.
because the next thing we see is him, because Maricela doesn't know what the hell's going on. She knows he's been weird lately and he was gone all night. She didn't know where he was. So this thing with the bug, I guess, is kind of the impetus for him to sit her down and tell her, we don't see this whole conversation, but he apparently explains what's been going on with him, what he thinks is happening, that he's cursed. She's doubtful. So he
Like-
goes and gets a knife and cuts his arm right in front of her and says, "Can't feel it." And
Well, and you can understand why she might be thinking my husband is having a breakdown, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, I was going to ask you because at this juncture, once he wakes up, and then for the rest of the movie, the audio of the film, it
Starts
is a
to-
deliberate
yeah.
choice that the
Mhm.
film made to sort of highlight the loss of this particular sense, the sense of hearing, by distorting the sound of the audio. What did you think of that as like a choice?
I
you know?
liked it. At first I didn't know. At first I thought it was my TV. I was like, well, maybe I was trying to turn it up because it's real very subtle. It's not like suddenly the audio level drops huge. It's not a huge drop. It's very subtle. So I kept thinking, well, maybe it's my TV. And then I was like, oh no, this is intentional. But yeah, so I thought it was really cool because as it progresses through the rest of the movie, it really became disconcerting because I was like leaning forward, like it's going to help me hear better if I lean forward. I'm straining to hear, so I can only imagine for him what that
Yes.
must have felt like.
That's what I definitely hit a moment towards the end of the movie where I was really getting frustrated,
Mhm.
not with like I think it's a brilliant choice too, like you said, but it gives you an inkling, the smallest
Mhm.
inkling of what this must feel like for people who do have to grapple with the loss of hearing. And because that's what their world sounds like all the time. And,
Mhm.
sometimes the audio would be better sounding than others. And so it was very, by the end of the movie, I was just like, I'm so frustrated. He does try to go back to Leonor to tell
Mhm.
her, hey, that didn't work.
Yeah. I want my money back. She's not there.
She's not there. So the man who led the ritual, we come to find out he died shortly after all of that. So
And that's where Leonor is. She's at the funeral there, apparently.
And so what
she
does she
says-
tell him? She tells him,
that he had a heart attack like right as soon as Santiago left. So
and she basically also tells Santiago, there's nothing that can be done
Yeah.
for you. Like it's time to just
go
go
spend your
home.
last whatever time you have left. Go spend it wisely.
At this point, we start to enter like the final chunk of the movie where he comes home. I think this is where he's looking
Yeah,
at the
This
photos.
is where he sees the picture.
And he realizes that the photos of the dead senator in like the big mansion or wherever it was that he found him. And he realizes that he captured something else in the image. And it's like a being or a face or it's something. So from here,
He sneaks back into the senator's house.
that's right. He goes back.
And he
That's
finds
right,
one of
he
those
finds the
desiccated
frog.
Yeah, he finds another desiccated toad like hidden
That's
in
right.
a vent.
So he knows that they're linked, and he knows that whatever happened to the senator is destined to happen to him. Perhaps this is where like the movie kind of tied in things that I wasn't following so quickly. So from here, he realizes or he learns that the senator had a rival
Well, he shows the picture with that shadowy figure in the shadows to his cop buddies, and I think it was the female cop again. She seems to be the brains in that pairing. She tells him, well, who would have had it in for the senator to have cursed the senator? And somehow that leads him to Google the senator's political opponent. And apparently there's articles on Google about how this political opponent has been rumored to be tied to witchcraft, that kind of thing. One of those articles apparently is from his tabloid. So he goes to his editor to ask him a favor to tell him who the source of that rumor was, and he gives it. Apparently, he gives it to him.
I completely missed this portion. Okay,
yeah. So that's how he,
because I was frustrated because I couldn't hear.
Yeah. So that's because as the sound is just getting more and more muffled as the movie goes. But yeah, so he apparently gives him the source of the information in that article, and Santiago arranges to meet with him, and it is a man who was the former driver of that political opponent. That's right.
Yes.
And he shows him the picture of the shadowy man, and the driver says, I know who that is. I know where he lives.
And he says, are you sure you know what you're doing going after that? So then Santiago, and I don't know, is this still off Friday? Is this Saturday? Are we in a new day?
This is like Friday, like heading into evening, because it's
Friday evening.
It's nighttime when he's out there at the hut, the
hut, some sort of compound or whatever. But Santiago goes to this space where this person or entity, whatever it is, and the whole time, again, can't hear. I think his vision might be at this point starting to play.
He's not moving around as well anymore.
He's not moving as well because he's got his loss of touch. And so I'm just like, this is a dangerous situation to be in for you.
So of course he goes by himself.
So he goes by himself. Well, yeah, because who else does he have at this point? He's not picking up Maestres calls. So he's wandering through this house. There's a bunch of candles everywhere, huge fire hazard. At one point, I saw he does see his camera. Mm-hmm. And maybe like a badge or something. So he recognizes he's in the right place. Whoever is behind this has his stuff. And so he wanders over to these goats. There's goats. And like there was a black goat. And I was like, aha, witchcraft. but anyway, he wanders over to this window and he sees, is it a human? Is it a demon? Is it like, what is it? He sees someone out there dancing around the fire with unnaturally long legs. And so that's why I was like, is that a human or is that like a demonic force?
At first I wasn't sure, but then when he turned around, he looked like he had a male body. I think it was a male, tall, skinny male with some kind of animal head covering.
All it says in the IMDb credits is person who plays this role is it's a nigromante, which it has something to do with necromancy, is what I looked up. So he sees this creature out in the distance.
The creature sees him.
And the creature turns and sees him. And then like Santiago gets distracted by a goat and he like turns away from it. And when he looks back, the creature's not there. And I was like,
never
holy crap.
Never a good idea. You know,
get out of there, Santiago. And then poof, out of nowhere. Poof, out of nowhere. The creature's right there, blows some sort of black dust in his face and knocks him out.
He wakes up and he's
still in that hut.
Yeah, he's still in that hut, restrained somehow, and he's trying
I was wondering if he was restrained or if he was like starting to go into like paralysis. I don't know. I mean, he doesn't because he's able to move later, but
yeah, maybe it's magical restraint. I don't know, but he's trying to barter with this person, entity, whatever it is. He's telling him, "Let me go. I'll do whatever you want. I'll give you whatever you want. Just let me go. Let me go. Let me go." And the entity person thing tells him, "Bring me your spawn."
And he's speaking super clearly. Like we hear him, no problem.
So then I thought, oh God, he's going to do it. He's going to sacrifice the child. And he said, bring me your spawn and I will return everything that I took from you. So he would get all of his senses back. Life would be back on track, hunky-dory. Santiago leaves. He goes
with a vial.
He goes back home. Because, his wife's only 8 weeks pregnant is what she told him. So the only way to get this fetus out of her is he'd be sacrificing the baby and his wife, basically. Yes. So he goes back home. He's walking towards his front door. He's really got struggling. That zombie shambling gait because he's just getting harder and harder for him to move.
Yes.
He goes in. His wife's in the shower because it's now Saturday morning. He goes into the kitchen. He's making, I think it was tea.
Trying to make tea, yeah.
Tea or coffee.
And
And
it's so hard to watch this because you're seeing he's struggling so hard to feel like his fists are rubbing together. How he managed to successfully make tea is beyond me. And
well, he's spilling stuff all
I
over
felt so
all
bad
over
for
the
him.
I don't feel
Yeah.
bad for him. He's
I
gonna
did
kill his
feel
wife.
bad for him. Except anyway, we'll get there, but I
Um,
do feel bad for him.
So yeah, he's really struggling. He's spilling all over the counter, but he's taking out these little sad cups of tea that are like less than half filled because he couldn't get enough liquid in there. He sets in front of her, and by this point, Marisela comes out. She's worried sick. You can tell by her face, but you cannot hear anything she's saying because his hearing is completely gone at this point.
Yes,
So,
and his vision's starting to go.
and it's not even
fuzzy.
giving us subtitles of what she's saying. So but she's clearly worried. She's frantic. She's asking all kinds of questions. We can assume
she's fuzzy because his vision is starting to go.
He's not really responding to her at all. He just kind of looks in shock, almost just kind of flat face. She's lifting the cup. She's going to take a drink. And at the last minute, he knocks it out of her hand and he stares at her. He looks forlorn. And then the screen just goes blank. And it holds that way for several seconds before the credits start to roll. So we know that he came through at the end. He didn't sacrifice her. He wasn't willing to do that, even to save himself. He just resigned himself to
his fate.
Which I'm wondering, Valerie, like even with the senator, because they said he's unresponsive, but there's nothing wrong with him. All the tests were clean. So I'm basically picturing you're trapped in your body, you're conscious, but you cannot speak, you can't hear, you can't see, you're just in this
darkness
void. Yeah. Yes, which would be horrible.
In darkness. Yeah. Well, and so fitting for the name of the movie, Disappear Completely. Yeah. I wanted to ask you what you thought of that ending and like that ultimate decision to seal his own fate.
I was very relieved that he did that.
That's why I felt bad for him because
he still was contemplating it and came really close. I asked my husband Robert, I was like, would you kill me to save yourself? And he's like, well, what are the circumstances?
Lay out the scene. Let's talk about this.
Here's what I thought was going to happen, and I'm glad it didn't. But what I thought was going to happen was he was going to go through with it. He was going to drug her, kill her, cut the fetus out, save himself, and then he was
take a photo of it,
take pictures of his wife, and then the last scene would him be at his dream. He'd finally got that gallery exhibition, but it was going to be pictures of his.
Oh, that's messed up, Veronica.
That's what I thought was going to happen. But I'm glad it didn't.
Dark as hell.
Should write movies. That's what I thought was going to happen. So I'm very glad but yes, I do feel bad because that's what I'm picturing is that he's just conscious mind in this dark void where he can receive no stimuli and cannot give any out.
Which is such a terrible hell. That's such a terrible, terrible fate, worse than death. Yeah, very, very interesting film. I did want to list some things that so we're going to get to the other thing I want to talk about, but I did want to list some things first. So like I said, a bunch of resources we have for you guys. The director, this was on collider.com. Henaine was intentional in creating an immersive, realistic experience for the audience while filming this movie. So he shared in an interview that rather than relying on jump scares or musical cues, they aimed to make a more personal film with more down-to-earth issues while still balancing the element of witchcraft and folk horror. He said, here in Mexico, witchcraft is something that people take very seriously, and it's very, very real for the majority of our population. And I wanted to reflect that in a way. So all the time I was trying to say, this has to look real. It has to feel real. It has to be very realistic. He said, I tried to go throughout the whole film with the production design and cinematography and referencing real things, how people behave in these environments. He also said, because referencing that senator's political rival who's rumored in the papers to be involved in witchcraft, Luis Javier Henaine references a book called Los Brujos del Poder by Jose Gil Olmos. It would roughly translate to The Witch's Power. He says it's a history of politicians that have been involved with witchcraft in Mexican history since the colonial age. So that's kind of...
Wow, I was like, dang.
So I thought that was kind of neat.
They'll do politics hardcore down there.
Yeah, I know, right? It's the kind of stuff that I forget who... I'm going to have to look it up, but a long time ago, I remember there was a woman running for some office, maybe senator or something out of, I want to say some Northeast state. And she had to go on television and debunk rumors that were circulating that she was a witch. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. This is here in the States. Someone who's like, I am not a witch. She had to go on and do ads saying, I am not a witch. So the thing I wanted to talk about, this is referencing the opening scene with that woman who was killed by the pole that crushed her roadside accident. Because in one of the reviews that we linked for everybody from IndieWire, they talk about kind of these are their words, beautiful aesthetic of that scene and how it evokes references to a woman named Evelyn McHale. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Evelyn McHale. Have you ever heard of this woman by chance?
Nope.
Okay. So I went a-digging. She was an American woman who jumped to her death from the 86th floor observation deck of the Empire State Building on May 1st, 1947. So what is interesting or tragic, I should say, about her death, beyond just the sheer fact of it, is that she had expressed in a note beforehand, apparently, that she left, that she did not wish to be seen by anyone. She said, I don't want anyone in or out of my family to see any part of me. However, as it so happened when she jumped Ron and she landed, a photography student named Robert Wiles happened to be nearby, and he took a photograph of her body as it lay on top of like a crushed car.
I think it would be pretty pulverized after falling 82 stories.
No. So the serene. I mean, she looks like she's sleeping. So this photo, this happened like 4 minutes after she plummeted, that he was on the scene taking photos of her body. This photograph was published and republished all over the world. It was published as Life magazine's Picture of the Week. And many industry professionals in the publishing world noted these are their words, that it had a beautiful aesthetic. They called it, quote, the most beautiful suicide. We'll link to a story that has more information about Evelyn McHale and her life leading up to her death. But yeah, she just looks like she's sleeping. And it's just a really sad, it's sad because like knowing that she never would have wanted to be photographed, obviously, and to have her photo plastered all over the world, it was just that's the sad part of it. And it really drives to a core element of this movie, this photographer's, I'm not talking about Robert Wiles, I'm talking about Santiago in the movie, his pursuit of art and the definite line of where art ceases to be, where it just starts to become exploitative and sensationalist. It really made me wonder. And I tried to do some reading on the photography student, Robert Wiles, on what he thought after the fact, like after it came out that she would never have wanted her photo plastered all over the world. I wondered if like Robert Wiles had any regret about that. Hopefully so, one would hope. And I don't know, like maybe he thought he was documenting a moment in time the way people documented like World War II or the Vietnam War, but this was obviously very different. This was like this woman on her worst day, right? So yeah, I wanted to share that because I was like, who is Evelyn McHale? So I went looking. And whether or not you choose to look at the photo, guys, like I'm linking to an article that tells you more about her life, but that photo is part of that article. So just know that going in, if you click on it, just a little bit of a...
When I was watching this movie, it did, because of the nature of Santiago's work and taking pictures of these crime scenes and the dead bodies, I remembered an old movie, like from the 70s. I think it was in the 70s. It was called The Eyes of Laura Mars, I think is what it was called. It starred Faye Dunaway, who was a photographer in the movie, and she would shoot, like they weren't really dead, but the subject of most of her photos was people that were staged to be dead. And it was very artistic and it wasn't bloody. So it just kind of reminded me of that she in the movie was pretty well known for it, pretty successful at taking those kinds of pictures. And the movie, I don't remember the specifics, but she starts to see visions through the eyes of a killer. So it kind of was more about that than about
her profession,
her work.
Yeah,
but that was her work. They just weren't really dead, so it was different from Santiago and pretending to be dead. And here's where I took it. So there were at least a couple of people in the articles that you linked where they're like, "What did they write?" I was like, "Really, people? You're like harsh." That Santiago had done too much to be forgiven, deserved to be buried alive, and I'm like, "Really?
Damn!"
Like, no, he didn't.
He makes right
That's
at the
harsh.
end.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, what?
Deserved trip to hell. I mean,
no mercy.
No empathy.
Well,
I mean, they were not tasteful. It was.
Well, so let me ask you this,
because thing to do,
because it sounds like you didn't see him as despicable as I think some of those reviewers did. The articles you're talking about that you're referencing, because some of these reviews that we have linked for you guys, yeah, they kind of see Santiago as just this morally corrupt, loathed individual, but it sounds like you didn't feel that way at all.
I mean, I just saw he's, making a living, not in the most.
I saw him as kind of like self-centered, kind of like
Yeah, I mean,
self-involved.
but there's a lot of people that are just career focused and they're not necessarily willing to want to derail that for the sake of raising children. And
Mhm.
there's nothing inherently bad with that. You can certainly be a career first only person. It's just his wife was not, maybe they started in that headspace together, but she had moved past that and was in a different place. She was more wanting the child. So it would have been an issue if none of this had happened. If it had just been like regular life, it would have been an issue for them to deal with. But I don't necessarily see that as something to dislike about it. He could have been more sensitive when she told him the news. But it's not certainly that makes him deserving to go to hell and
No,
deserving to be basically buried alive in his own body. That's harsh. But yeah,
right,
I liked the movie overall. I thought it was another winner.
This particular filmmaker, I did not take a look at his full filmography, but I know that he's done a lot of comedy prior to taking a horror pivot. So, and didn't you say Isa Lopez kind of the same track record?
Mm-hmm.
Comedy or rom-com or something?
And his favorite horror movie is Halloween, and he watches it every year at Halloween, just like me.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. That's cool. For sure. Give it a watch, guys. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, Ron, in our final segment that I didn't get a chance to talk about last show, we have a article that we're linking for you guys out of the LA Times from JP Brammer called "The Lack of Latino Representation in Film is Deeper Than Negligence, It's Intentional Exclusion." So one of the things that we didn't say up top, if you're new to this podcast, Veronica and I are actual sisters. We started this podcast a year ago with a goal in mind of we're going to focus on Spanish language horror and Latin American horror. We do talk about other films, including American horror, but kind of the reason we want to put our focus where we put it is because there is much to be said about Latine audiences here in America fueling a lot of the box office when it comes to our film industry. There are countless articles, and we've linked that stuff before on our website. We continue to do it. This article will be linked for you guys too. We've linked to sources that have pointed out how for years and years and years, you have Latino and other communities of color as well who are putting seats in theaters, buying the tickets, keeping the film industry afloat, certainly during the pandemic when it was struggling. And it's not necessarily always reflected back to us in terms of representation on screen. So I just wanted to share this article. According to the recent report, which is linked in the article from Annenberg Inclusion Initiative at the University of Southern California, Latino representation in Hollywood has not shown any meaningful growth in the last 16 years. This is despite the fact that we make up 19% of the US population. Only 4.4% of actors in lead or co-lead roles were Latino, and fewer than 1% were Afro-Latino. Of the Latino characters that did make it to screen, they were often depicted as immigrant, as low income, as violent criminals, as angry, temperamental. So all of your kind of standard harmful cliches and stereotypes. In the most literal sense, we are the stories that we tell. That's how we communicate our values, our goals, our beliefs. In the US, Hollywood is the greatest proliferator of American myths, drawing on sentiments and anxieties of our time and reflecting them back to us. When a group of people makes up such a sizable chunk of society, but is not shown to exist in that society's mainstream art, the writer of this article says that's not negligence, it's intentional exclusion. There's a lot of good stuff. Please go and give it a read and take a look at it. It perfectly encapsulates why it is that we do what we do, why we have chosen to focus on what we've chosen on with this show. So we'll continue to uplift things like this as we come across it. Ron, is there anything else you wanted to add? Anything have you started the book?
No.
Okay. Well, the clock is running. So
when are we doing it? So you said the end of August, right?
End of August, but that's coming up fast.
That's like a whole month.
Okay. Well, I need time. Veronica can whip through books very fast, but I need time. That's why we give you guys as much time as we do, because if you're like me, and Veronica, you're reading a lot of books, and I don't expect you to make our book your sole priority. Although you should.
And I struggle with being told I have to read a book. I'm a mood reader. I like to read with whatever fancy strikes me.
Okay, so the book that we're reading, guys, the Don't Watch at Night book that we're reading right now is Monstrillo by Gerardo Samano Cordova. Did I say that right? That is the book that we're reading. I've barely started it. I have started it. What I've read so far, beautiful. Excited to talk about it. It will be the last episode that we do in August. So we generally put out 2 episodes a month. And so the August episode that we will be talking about this book will be, I believe, on the 19th. So tune in for book club episode. Read this book. If you've read it already, great. If you haven't, just know that our book club episodes have spoilers galore. We talk about the book in full.
I'm thankful. We're both thankful for all the people that have chosen to give us a listen, even though we don't really know what we're doing. Certainly not when we started, but we're thankful for everyone that's been along for this journey. I've really enjoyed the chance to watch a lot of movies that I'm pretty sure I would not ordinarily have ever come across on my own, would have missed out on. It's been nice, of course, seeing you. Although that's hit or miss. But generally a good thing. Generally, no, I'm kidding. No, it's been nice to be able to chat with you on that basis, since you never actually answer your phone.
Because you're not dying. You're not dying.
You could be. You don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's been a fun ride. So I'm looking forward to season 2 and all that will bring.
Yes. Huge thank you guys for taking us on this year and going down this journey with us. I'm having a blast and hopefully you are as well. So thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
You did?
I knew it from the jump. Yeah. When that happens, it's either drug or demon possession. So
it doesn't look like a house at all. It looks very Burton-esque, Tim Burton-esque. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Beetlejuice. What was that?
Sorry. Oh, I didn't know you would pick. Okay. I don't know why I thought that wouldn't pick up my end of.
We don't have time to cry, woman. We need to get to survival. Yeah.
Kind of, forward visions.
What are some of our goals for
I don't know. So much of it takes place inside. It kind of has that almost claustrophobic feel to it.
Doesn't sound gleeful, let me tell you that. Ma'am, leave that house. Just leave.
Yes. Man of a body. There's a body of a man.
A man of a body. In the event that I get bit, are you prepared to do what you need to do and put me down?
Oh, yeah, man.
If you get bit, Ron, I will miss you. Thank you for your service. And it is time to carry on. Don't Watch at Night is a Nest production hosted by me, Valerie, and Veronica. Editing by me. Music by Omar Chagor. Production support for this episode provided by Lorenzo Villarreal and Alex Street. Listen to new episodes of Don't Watch at Night every other Monday, and don't forget to give us a rate and review. It's the best way to help us grow.